G'day guys, and welcome to this business management lesson. In today's lesson, we're looking at key knowledge point 119. That is Unit 1, Area of Study 1, and the 9th key knowledge point for this area of study. Today specifically, we're talking about the contributions that businesses make to the economic and social well-being of a nation. Specifically, we're talking about this nation, Australia. When we're talking about the economy, we're talking about the rate at which production and consumption of goods and services occurs within a fixed region. For the purposes of this study, we'll be thinking about the region that is Australia. The rate at which things are produced, goods and services are made available to purchase, and the rate at which these things are purchased or consumed. In Australia, our economic system is considered to be a mixed market economy. What that means is that in some cases, we have free market economic structures where individuals, private individuals such as yourself, can start a business and you can sell products and you can make money from that. It's just supply and demand, and the government isn't going to interfere terribly with your choices in that area. In other cases, the government controls certain industries much more closely. And this is why it's sort of a mixed market economy, because we have free market economics on one side for private citizens in many cases, and then there are other cases where the government far more closely controls those industries. For example, the rail networks in Australia all have significant state and federal government interference. The NBN, our national broadband system, is pretty closely government controlled as well. So those are just two examples of business or economic factors under government control. When we consider economic well-being, we're sort of talking about the health of the economy. In a healthy economy, individual wealth is higher, and families and individuals have more money, which means that they can buy more things, they can afford the cost of living, they can afford to buy rent, they have disposable incomes, they can engage in recreational activities like going to the cinema, or purchasing a new car, going on holidays, buying a new flat screen TV, whatever the case may be. In a weaker economy, unemployment typically goes up as businesses look to cut costs, which means there's less money in households, individuals have less money, cost of living pressures are harder to deal with, perhaps flashy properties with high rent go vacant because people can't afford to pay for that sort of rent. And consumption of production goes down. People aren't going to the cinemas, they're not buying new TVs, they're not buying new cars, they're not eating out at restaurants as much. That's how you would identify that a weak economy exists in a region. One way that businesses contribute to economic well-being is through the provision of employment. Employed Australians, or really anyone who is employed, will do labour. They will work. In response for that work, or to remunerate employees for that work, those workers are typically paid a salary or a wage. And then they can take that salary or wage to buy things that they need, like groceries. This is less a cause and effect sort of linear relationship, as it's more of a cycle. A business pays you your wage, you go off and spend that wage at a business. The business where you've spent your money has earned revenue that they can use to pay their employees, and then their employees will go off and buy goods and services at other businesses who can then afford to pay their own employees. In a healthy economy, everyone benefits because of this cycle of production and consumption. Another way that businesses can contribute to economic health or economic growth is that they produce goods and services that can be purchased. One measure of economic health is GDP, or gross domestic product, which is a way of measuring the monetary value of all finished goods and services produced within a country's borders within a specific period, typically annually. For Australia, if you consider all of the things that are available to purchase on every shelf in every business today and for the rest of the year, and add up all of the values of those things, you've worked out the gross domestic product. Now, of course, calculating GDP is done by people with significant maths knowledge, and it's never exact. It could be off by several hundred chupa chups, give or take. But GDP is a commonly used economic indicator. Certainly, another contribution that businesses can make to the economic well-being of a nation is through the payment of taxation. All business activity in Australia attracts taxes, and all businesses are required to pay taxes if they make more money than they spend. Taxes are typically used by governments to provide goods and services that benefit the community. One example might be investment in infrastructure like roads and power lines, the pipes that deliver water to your house. And another example might include healthcare, the provision of ambulance and medics to work in those ambulances, hospitals, nurses, bulk billing doctors. They're all paid for, or at least compensated by the government allocating tax revenue to pay for those services. There are images along the bottom of your screen now of other ways in which, particularly the Australian government, spends tax revenue. One thing we can look at to see how this works in Australia is, and I'm afraid that these figures are a little bit out of date now, but it seems like this is the last time that these details were published transparently was 2019. In the financial year 2018 to 2019, small businesses produced enough output to be responsible for 32.7% of Australian GDP. Medium-sized businesses produced a bit less, being responsible for 21.2% of Australian GDP, and large-sized businesses were carrying the rest, with almost half of everything available for sale in Australia was produced by large businesses in that period. One thing that Australia is good at doing is producing goods or services that can be exported to other markets. One example is Circus Oz, an Australian business. Well, it's a circus, a series of circuses, in fact, that not only travel around Australia, entertaining Australian crowds, but travel the world. And because they're an Australian registered company, when someone in let's say Thailand goes to visit Circus Oz and buys their ticket, that revenue comes back to the Australian company, and the taxes on that revenue are paid to the Australian government. So even though it's customers in Thailand or Vietnam or the USA or the UK, wherever Circus Oz goes, the tax revenue comes to the Australian government. So exported products, exported services, businesses that export and travel the world are of significant benefit to the Australian economy. Of course, this key knowledge point isn't all just about economic well-being, it's also about social well-being. You've got to remember that when we're talking about social well-being, we're talking about contributions to quality of life for people in the community. So employment does have impacts on social well-being. Employment provides people with a sense of purpose, a reason to get out of bed in the morning, which has been shown to have significant impacts on people's physical health, and certainly their mental health also, a sense of belonging, a sense of contribution to society, opportunities to build self-esteem, opportunities to do something that you can then be proud of, personal happiness and achievement, and certainly, and perhaps the most important, opportunities to network and connect with others. If you're not particularly fond of going to school and sitting in your maths class or your business management class or something like that, but you do have friends at school, you've got to consider that's one significant benefit of going to school, that you've had that opportunity to network and connect with others. And ultimately, the idea that you've got somewhere to be each day, that you've got these opportunities to do things that you could then reflect on and be proud of, means that your schooling is contributing to your social well-being in much the same way having a job later in your life, or if you have a job now, is also providing you similar opportunities. In summary for this key knowledge point, a strong economy is one in which there are lots of things being produced and bought and sold. The value of all of the things for sale in a region, in an economy, is the GDP. Businesses can contribute to economic well-being through the payment of wages to employees and through taxation, not to mention their contributions to the calculation of GDP. The payment of taxes goes towards funding government spending on services that can have a flow-on effect of increasing social well-being themselves, and certainly employment is one direct way that businesses can contribute to social well-being. That's all for today. See you next time.